James Loveday, Tim Roberts, Tom Hitchcock, aka Mr. Purple. Bit of a special episode today. On my right, I have James Loveday, who's one of our goats. If you haven't heard about the goat yet, check us out on the 15th of April. If you've missed that one, reach out and we'll let you know when the next one is. And in my opinion, we've also got another goat. He's just not official yet, but he is part of the Bald Guys Alliance. Okay, Tim Roberts. Okay,
I'm a bold goat. Sorry.
I'm not. Wait, shall I stop recording now? I don't know. We could go a whole different tangent here, Tim. But listen, the reason I've brought these two gentlemen together, okay, is because I've had separate conversations with both about a product rollout in Australia, which is significant. It's significant for everybody who's got elderly mums and dads. It's significant in the world of the NDIS disabilities, the overall wellness and care, and specifically the monitoring of falls throughout Australia. Okay, I will show you. I've got a box of the product here. Okay, so you know what it looks like and its name. I don't know if you can see that clearly. Is that the right frame for you?
Yep.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Fantastic. So this is a brand new product. It's built by an Irish company called Seenyor. Okay, they are worldwide. They're across the UK, Europe, US, and now Australia. Okay, we're excited. I'm excited to be distributing this because I know that it's filling many gaps with existing products out there, and it should revolutionize that part of the caregiving world. Okay, and giving people peace of mind for caregivers and families alike. We've gone into quite a bit of detail into the product. So I'd love to know, James, first of all, because I know you've had a lot of involvement with this product. I want you to maybe tell us a little bit from your understanding what this product is and what you're most excited about, please.
I'm most excited about it from a data perspective in theory. One of the things I've come across with lots of SIL providers is that we're having to prove ourselves to the supports we're doing. And truthfully, around those active supports that we're doing, like active overnights, support workers are saying, hey, I'm having to go see this person 5 times, or, this person's always calling me, and there's just no data around it. So I think the way the system works, where it's kind of a radar system which de-identifies the person, so there's no like privacy risk or anything like that, but it shows that the amount of need and the amount of support someone physically needs across a house is really, really pivotal to keep someone still funding long term. Because I know many SIL providers have massive problems with having to justify stuff, and this is just raw data that it collects. The other thing is that from the perspective of someone that might live, so someone with a disability that might live in like a 10-to-1 model SDA, or want to live as independent as possible, the kind of falls prevention component it has and how that works really excites me, because I feel like we can give some people a bit more freedom, especially around their own self-transfers. I know a lot of people in wheelchairs that only really they have to have these shifts just to go to bed, but in theory they're self-transferring. So in theory, it's just someone kind of being there, where, if there's a monitoring system that can monitor that, a lot of them, the problem is they're moving their self-monitoring systems or phones from chairs to beds, and they fall and then they don't have access. They don't want to wear a personal device around their neck, that kind of stuff. But then also what I found really interesting is I know a lot of people that are on heavy medications with disabilities, and that breathing component that it does at night over the bed, where it monitors someone's heart rate and someone's breathing. And if it becomes irregular, you can kind of set what that irregular is, so that then it goes, hey, something's not right with this person, go see them. And that's if they're in a normal model. But if they're in like a 10-to-1 model, it takes better. Like some people, medications interact with each other. They might not have the support to see them 24/7, but it's that little bit of like, hey, if someone's heart rate drops to here, that's abnormal for them. So maybe we need to do something about this. I just think the fact that it's a falls prevention kind of, not a falls prevention, but it catches falls, but it's got this monitoring around the heart and around the breathing, which is kind of non-invasive, I guess. It's quite a non-invasive system. And then also the data that can be drawn from that to support the person, but also support providers to support these people better, is just why I'm kind of excited about it. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So I know, Tim, you're looking to put some of this into your accommodation that you run with Ethical STA. There's my lisp coming out then, isn't it? What's your thoughts on the practical usages and also what James has just said?
Yeah, look, I agree. I think the technology in the specialist disability accommodation world, when it comes to having these types of safety devices. So, I've got a clause up at the moment because I didn't remember it off by heart, but in the NDIS design standards for specialist disability accommodation, clause 23.2 states that as an STA provider, for it to be enrolled, we do need to have a video intercom or other communication system to be able to provide communication between a participant and their supports when not within a line of sight. So whether that's in a house scenario or whether that's in a 10-to-1 model or an apartment vertical model. So at the moment, those devices are really poor. They're really basic and the tech is just not up to scratch. Most of the time you see them on a wall. Again, not really practical if someone is bedbound, if someone has to, get assistance to be transferred out to then use the device to contact someone when they're not in line of sight, kind of defeats the purpose. So again, in the market at the moment, there's not a whole lot that sort of fits that bill that is affordable and practical. So I was excited to be like, great, instead of these pendants that have to be charged all the time, and if they're not charged, they're not working, or they need to have a SIM card that has to be paid for and kept on, needs to be kept updated. Otherwise it stops working. I constantly get reminders of, Tim, your people are using the SIM card too much. We have these ongoing issues that we're not being able to provide probably the quality that we would like. So we spend a lot of time and energy designing these really beautiful homes. And these, we put a lot of thought and effort to ensure that they meet their needs and exceed the needs and expectations. But then we have these crappy tech that sort of looks out of place. So I was excited. Again, I'm hoping that, and I believe we spoke a bit about this, Tom, that the product will not only help with the data collection, keeping people safe, supporting, I'll come back to that, but I was also hoping that it would replace the need to have a pendant, and that a pendant can be a backup, or a pendant can be something that people choose to use if they want to. But we have a system that doesn't need batteries changed, that does capture a lot more than just hey, I need help in emergency. And a lot of the people that I'm starting to support at the moment in our homes can't use a pendant, that they don't have arms that work, they, calling out, hey Siri and stuff like that is an option, but then you're talking to Google and it gets more complex. So I'm excited about the system to be able to do multiple things for me. Talking about what James said around SIL, I think the way that the NDIS is going, we're talking as an insurance, we need more and more evidence. And so as an SDA provider, I look at it and go, if my participants' health and well-being is at the forefront, then they are a happy, well-placed long-term tenant, which is ideal. But also the SIL provider, if they're getting the data that they need to then obviously form better ways to support the participant, but also the evidence they need to give back to the NDIS. Ultimately, it means that the three parties, the individual and their family, the SDA provider and the SIL provider, can actually work more closely to get better outcomes for everyone.
One of the things I just wanted to add to Tim was a lot of people I know, when I've worked in supports where someone's had a fall, when they've had the fall, they're actually quite in a vulnerable position already. And so a lot of people I've had to deal with when they've had a fall might actually be nude in theory at the time. And one of the things we have at the moment is if they have a fall and they use some of the current systems, it actually sometimes turns on a video, okay, and becomes a video conference. And in theory, are we capturing someone in their best moment? Because this is really uses voice and radar and doesn't do that video component. I actually just think it allows people to have a bit more of a dignity. We already remove quite a bit of dignity from people with disabilities' lives by the fact that we're assisting with bathing and toileting and a whole bunch of other life tasks. So we can add that little bit of dignity by having a technology that does everything except, maybe capture those moments that, I wouldn't want them captured.
And talking to that, James, like it also tells you where the fall is. So if you were to press an alarm button with the current tech, it just sound an alarm and say Unit 5 alarm, come and help, right? As in, and then they're walking in, they don't actually know where the person is. So as in here, because of the radar system, it will be fall, bathroom, and then people can come in and with that in mind go, hey, this person's fallen in the bathroom. We may find that they're in a bit of a compromised position. Let's take some steps to be a bit more mindful.
One of the things I also, when it's been explained to me is, I know that quite often a bathroom, people are very vulnerable. And even if they have a fall, they're probably more vulnerable than what they are in the rest of the house, in theory. And then the other thing is with the way that can track, a lot of people might be in a bit of a kind of emergency and they're trying to get out of their house. They're trying to get out to that hallway and they may fall directly behind the door. Okay. So it indicates this person's directly behind a door. So in theory, you can then go, well, how do I get in then? You know what I mean? You're not, because you know where that person is, which means you can be like, oh, they've fallen behind the door. I'm going to need someone else to help me push this door. Okay. And you can bring an innocent bystander. You can bring someone else with you. So if you're I'm quite a large lad, I would be able to open a door and probably push someone. But if you're a smaller support worker, if you're a community member, if you're a family member, in theory, you know exactly where they are. So you know the assistance you're going to need. But you can also say, oh, I'm going to need to contact the fireys to help me with this. You know what I mean? Because this is beyond my physical ability to be able to help this person. So yeah.
I love that. And I know I've spoken to a few key providers because the launch actually hasn't happened yet. We'll be speaking to distributors who are nationwide and just making sure we get the logistics right. So whoever needs it can have it installed correctly, and have it to its maximum capacity. So I've been speaking to the providers I know and like and trust, running it by them for their feedback as well. And obviously this is it, when these conversations are happening, they've got properties, they've got reasons to put this out for their participants, their community, whether it be NDIS or aged care.
There was
or any
one
else.
other little thing I wanted to add. Sorry. There's a huge cohort of people with disabilities that have come from kind of legacy style institutionalization. And a lot of people talk about the trauma that they received in there. And a lot of it was sexual trauma that they received. There was a lot of inappropriate touching of a night and stuff like that. Something that this does, from what I understand, is if there's someone else in the room, so say you've got someone who's nonverbal, right? The next morning, you go in as a support worker, they might be in a 3-to-1, they might be maybe they're in a larger setting, who knows? And they just don't seem right. Something must have happened last night, but they can't vocalize that. You can go through that data and go, well, actually, last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, someone else came into that room and spent a good 10 minutes beside the bed. It wasn't a support worker. Or, hey, there happens to be 2 people in this bed when there should only be 1. So, and I think a lot of parents I've worked with who might have older children who have been reluctant to put their family member into a supported accommodation setting, a lot of it has to do with what's happened in the past. And I think that this will kind of shore up how people are supported in the future. So, yeah.
Safeguarding. It's great.
Yeah, I love that. And it's probably talks a little bit to the point I was about to make as well, where the providers I'm speaking with, when I speak to them, I speak to them about the usages for their accommodations, but 9 times out of 10, they're thinking also for their own parents. Actually, they get of an age now where we're considering X, Y, Z, and it pulls it back to that immediate user case. Actually, well, if it's good enough for my own family, okay, and we want this yesterday. We've been looking at other things and we like it, but we see its flaws. Murphy's Law is those flaws is where the falls will happen. That's where the mistakes will happen. That's where it's just the way life is, and they haven't commit on that basis. But I do love that fact that yes, they've got their businesses, they've got their accommodation, and they see all these benefits. But it's their first user case is in house for themselves and their family.
We're agreeing with you.
My internet's a bit sticky today. I'm seeing pixelated movements, so I weren't too sure if you're talking or it just got stuck there. But that's all good. Tim, you raised a really good point as well on the financials of things. Okay.
Yep.
You're pretty good at number crunching comparatively to me, which isn't saying much on my skill set of number crunching anyway. But there is a backwards compliment there, to deliver good quality care and service, you need to have a healthy business. Okay.
Yep.
So the maths needs to stack up. There needs to be a value there as well. What was your takeaway on how this can benefit a business that has accommodation?
Yeah, look, I think the cost of it was reasonable. So my understanding based on the conversations we had is like installing it is not going to be exuberant. It's going to be something that, I would say all businesses could afford, and it's comparative to what's already on the market. So that was positive. That was encouraging because then, you straight away, you're not having to sort of look around and find extra dollars in your budget. So that was a win. And then look, I do think the financial component is, if we're talking NDIS, it's just coming back down to data and honestly having to go, as James said, we have I'm funded for an active overnight. That's expensive. And we know that the NDIS from the government has a really clear mandate. You need to get growth down to, I think they've changed it to 5 to 6%, which is again, dropped down from 8%, which is what it was. And they got to do that somehow, right? And the way they're going to do that is to go, do you really need an active overnight? We'll make it a sleepover, right? Because it saves, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's a lot of money. And if you don't have the data in your notes, and we know that, I come from an allied health background, and I know that trying to get allied health professionals to write notes, even though it's drummed into us throughout our university degrees, is really hard, and particularly to write good notes. So always like, do your notes, do your notes, do your notes. I know that then taking that into the SIL space, really hard to get notes and quality notes, because again, with what time, if you're a 1-to-3 ratio and someone needs some support, the notes are the last thing that you end up thinking about. And so it's a constant challenge, and that's really the evidence. And so you either need to go and backtrack and find it, or you've got to try and figure out how to tell the story with the notes that you've got. And that story is becoming harder and harder to tell because the bar that the NDIS is setting is getting higher and higher. And so what we're seeing is SIL providers, are just the plans getting cut, 10%, 20%, 30%, and that is significant. So I'm, at the moment, we're looking at ways to do it within our properties, and that is, QR codes and photos and stuff like that. But again, it's clunky. It's probably it's better than handwritten notes, but it's still clunky. The data's got to go somewhere, then we have to collaborate it. I think what I noticed is the dashboard was really clear, and to be able to go, cool, this person, they were awake 10 times last night. And you can see that another person, we know that that's the support worker, has entered into that room and provided support they were there for 10 minutes, they were there for half an hour, they were there for 45 minutes, then they came back. So we can see over the course of that night, they were up 10 times and they were there for 4 hours. So actually, we can see that evidence for 3 months, for 6 months, for 12 months. And we can go, look, here's the evidence. Here's why we still need an active overnight. And I think that that's going to be, one, allows us to do higher quality care first and foremost, because we get to a better understanding, and also go, hey, why is this person awake 10 times? And we can start to ask some more questions, I think, delve deeper to provide better care. But I think financially, it also means we've got the evidence we need when it comes to talking to the NDIS.
I also think from a SIL perspective, if you're having to pull the data on how many times someone's been awake overnight, right, it's extremely heavy on time. In theory, you have to go through a whole bunch of case notes. You have to look at everything. You have to make sure you've captured everything. And there's a human element to it. And let's admit it, when there's a human element, you can kind of cook the books a bit. You can kind of make things look like they might not be what they actually are. But when you've got something where you can go in, because I've seen the dashboard as well, and you can say, hey, please let me know how many times over the last month someone has had to enter this room or this person's woken up, and you press a button and it tells you, and you go, I didn't write this. This is data. This is not, there's no human element to this. This is just raw data saying this is what has happened. There's a lot less way of disputing that. Like, yeah. And it
I
costs
think,
a lot less money in the long term, because I'm not sitting there physically going through every SIL house that we have, every participant, every plan review to plan to justify kind of our supports as an existence. So, yeah.
And on the flip side of that, a case that I'm dealing with at the moment is, we had a gentleman who, needed to go to hospital because there was issues with the catheter. And they were like, but there were no issues yesterday. Doing really, really well. Meant to be checked overnight on regular checks, Team came in the morning. Why is the urinary bag full? It shouldn't be full. It should have been checked. It should have been, or ... They did someone actually go in and check? Don't know. Right? And so what then has to happen is you then got to go through security cameras. You've got to, it's he said, she said, you got to check the notes. It gets quite hard to then manage the quality there. And the ramifications are significant, right? Significant for the staff, significant for the participant and their well-being. And so again, having that in place means that as the team leader if you're a SIL manager or a SDA manager and you go, hey, why'd this person have to go to hospital? They go, oh, it's like, no, well, show me. How many times did they get checked last night? Because you'll be able to see that person come into the room. You'll be able to see them do the check. How long were they actually there checking for that person for? And that will come up on that radar screen. If they didn't go, it won't come up. And you'll be able to go, hang on, this person actually wasn't checked for 10 hours. So what were you doing on your active overnight? So I think there's a quality piece there as well to actually check to ensure that, because again, we're all here, we're all passionate about ensuring high quality care. And I think this system helps us to safeguard on both sides, get good outcomes.
This part might not make it into the long-term video, but I also think that for someone that's done active overnights before, and I know staff that do active overnights, there is always that skepticism around, is that person just sleeping on the couch? And in theory, and this radar system would capture, if that person's been laying on the couch for 2 hours and their heart rate and breathing has started to drop, maybe they're actually asleep. So maybe they're not actually doing an active overnight. So from a SIL perspective, you can then work with your staff better to do appropriate supports. So yeah. None of my staff are like that, but they're all great.
It happens. I think we get cynical in our old days, James. But prevention is better than cure. It's nice to nip all this stuff in the bud, and it seems like just by having a very surface level conversation with you guys, there's quite a few use case scenarios where this is beneficial, and the list could go on. If we have more and more people here, more and more time, and what about this? What about this? We'll smooth over so many items, and I think that's why the product itself is popular. So worldwide, where it's gone out, it's done very well in the private market. So people have been quite happy just to go out and pay for it as it is for the reasons you've just stated. But we're lucky in Australia. We have these schemes that have funding that pay for this. So it's in the most part, which makes it quite a unique proposition here. Touching on that, for those people that don't understand how the funding would work in the NDIS for something like this, who's I saw a little smile there, James. That one wasn't pixelated. How can we explain this in layman's terms?
I would say come out of low cost assistive technology is probably where it would be funded. The only component, I think, based on the price, it would certainly come under low cost assistive tech, which is $1,500. Be under that is my understanding. I think the only component please correct me if I'm wrong here, James, is that it would be the ongoing subscription component, which I think is, less than the price of a mobile phone subscription per month. It's the subscription component that I think would have to come out of the participants' funding, not the funding, sorry, participants' own funds, personal funds.
Yeah.
Because typically speaking, the NDIS doesn't fund ongoing sort of month-to-month subscriptions.
Yeah. I would agree that that's what it would look like, but for the cost of what it's actually going to cost and the peace of mind, I think that it's a fail-safe. But I also think from like my perspective, if I was obviously I am a silver provider, I also work with SDA providers. I know a bunch of SDA providers that are interested in this and going, well, look, for the cost, if we put
I'd put
in
it in myself.
that if the SDA provider is going to put this in, from the SIL provider's perspective, for the cost of that data and the richness of it would be, I would say as the SIL provider, I want that data. So I'm going to, in theory, pay the subscription to have it. I'm not going to put, that's not something I'm going to put onto the participant, because that data, yes, it's going to help the participant, but also it's going to help us help that participant.
Yeah.
And for what it costs, like, you know what I mean? Like as I was saying before, if I have to I have to go through at the end of a plan and pull all the data for the active overnights, right? That is going to take hours on hours on hours. Okay. No matter what the CRM is, that's going to take a long time. If I can type up a report, say I want this, and it draws it and puts it in a report for me, I've already saved a lot of money. So that money that I've saved in doing that report is actually what I've put in to be able to get that data over the year.
Yeah, but I think you're quite right. So at the business level, it essentially pays for itself and some, whilst there's a absolute upside for the care and quality for those that reside there. And obviously for the individuals, yes, there's a plan that could cover the funding that cover most of it, if not all of it in some cases. It depends on scenario basis. But again, this is still an upside to how it's rolled out worldwide. Everybody else worldwide is quite happily paid for it because they see the value on it as a standalone. So I think we can be very grateful for the set of circumstances we have with the schemes here in Australia.
You know how they always say, for the cost of a cup of coffee a day, you could have, in theory, literally, where it's not a coffee a day. You know what I mean? Like it's, yeah.
That's a fair call. All right, gents. Well, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing this roll out. I know James and I, we're having some really good conversations with some providers right now. We've got user case data coming in for both NDIS and aged care. And that's, that's going to be real. It's going to be tangible. We're going to be able to visualize that. So anybody listening to this would like to have some more information, do reach out to any of us, I guess. I'm going to throw you into that as well, Tim.
Sure.
And we look forward to having a conversation. But from me, Tim, James, thank you very much for your time and your inputs.
Thank you.
Hi there, Mr. Purple here. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. We've got loads of videos coming up. In this case, I would like to share with you an opportunity to have a conversation with me directly. We do lots of business coaching. We work with owners and leaders within business that want to see their business go from here to grow their business and to grow themselves. We are offering a free 15-minute discovery session with myself. If you're interested in that, just book with the message below. Thank you.